Hello and welcome to the Women Writers Fest. This festival is the world's largest traveling festival talking about women writing in every kind of field. And the way it's shaped up in these last 5 to 6 years has been phenomenal. To see the kind of works that are coming out from women, by women, about women has been truly a fascinating journey of the written word, which is why this time's festival, the second of 2021, is called A Woman's Place and the Written Word. Where are we in the journey of writing today, and how are we breaking new ground? Lots of new authors coming through with stories that have been unheard, unwritten, many times because the written world was full of just men writing or women writing with men's names. Thankfully, in the last decade or so, the surge of female writing has really led us to many fascinating stories that we have had in our backyard, at our homes, in our neighbors' homes, and much more. And we relish them, hearing them, listening to them, seeing them unfurl, but really never quite had them packed in books that we can keep for memories and then talk about them in discussions like these. So, really delighted that the Women Writers Fest has gone places in its literal way. In the physical space, we literally have touched every big, small city of the country. But in the virtual world, we are delighted that we can go across our borders to many other international regions as well. So, like that, once again, the Women Writers Fest, this edition, will bring you many different voices on the theme of a woman's place and the written word. I'm going to start our session this time around and the festival today with a very interesting discussion with two women who have tried writing their books for the first time. I love the way women take sort of this idea of shifting gears in one lifetime many times over to experiment with the new, the experiment or to experiment with not just their own self and writing, but also with how they're changing. And that's what makes women so fearless and their writing so fierce, with all the gentleness, love, and interesting aspects of what they want to bring through in a book. Our first session is with two spectacular women, Anindita Ghosh, who has formerly been with Vogue and now taken a try at her first novel, which I have read and love it. It's called The Illuminated. This is the book. At the Women Writers Fest, we really like our viewers to take a good stare at this because they should know the author and go out there and click on the online buy button and buy the books. And the second debut author is Ashwiny Iyer Tiwari, who's written Mapping Love. We've seen many delightful works of hers on screen that have pushed us to think and rethink. And now she has onboarded a brand new journey of writing her first novel. The two books also have very strong female characters. I love how Tara has shaped in Anandita's book and Urja in Ashwini's book, and we'll talk about that more. But I think the title of our discussion is really the debut novel. How do we get there with our stories and sometimes have that courage to put them down the way we do with all its weakness and its strength? Anandita, if I may start with you, writing this novel, what has it meant for you and why did you choose to do it?
Firstly, Shaili, thank you for having me here at the Women Writers Fest. You were speaking about shifting gears, and I think you just starting this festival is a big gear shift in itself. And I've followed, your channels, and I've followed these talks, and I'm really happy to be part of it. I'm happy particularly to be here with Ashwini Iyer Tiwari because both our books were out actually just 2 days apart, and we've been on several, lists and listicles and all of that together. So it's good to finally actually be face to face with her, even though it's virtual. So Shaili, to answer your question, sorry, was it about how I started writing this book? Okay, so I think most novelists, if you ask people who are writing books, they probably have always known they wanted to write or write a book. It's been a long-standing interest. I've always wanted to write. I want to credit one woman writer in particular for making me believe that me as an Indian woman could write a book that could hopefully travel the world. I was 13 when God of Small Things was out. I had an elder sibling, so I've been a very voracious reader because I used to read whatever he would read. So I had read, all of Anton Chekhov while when I was 11 or 12 and all of that. But Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things was the first book by an Indian woman, a woman who looked like the people around me. So it was hugely inspiring to have cousins and people abroad speak about the book and read it. However, the commercials of book writing, of fiction writing globally, but especially in India, aren't really conducive for it to be a career. So when you and I don't come from a family where I could just graduate and sit around at home and say, okay, I'm going to try to be a novelist. So I think unless you have a trust fund, you can't really do that. So I tried to spin my love for writing to build a career in journalism. I was very happy, and I am happy being a journalist and editor. And I'm almost quite proud that I could, give myself the privilege to then write a book. So I've been writing this book since 2015. It was a 5-year journey, 1 year of editing after that, and it's finally out. So yes, that's been, and now we are here. So yes.
Indeed, congratulations for that. That's quite a long journey. I'll get into the book and how you shaped it in just a bit. Ashwini, your experience with finally getting this down to a book. We've always seen you as a storyteller, but how did this challenge you?
I think this would be my third shift from joining as an art director in an ad agency to then becoming writing for ads, and then writing for feature, and then directing features, and now going back to the one thing which we I think always love. I completely agree with Anandita when she says that yes, each one of us as a storyteller, I just feel that all of us are here as storytellers, and each one of us as a storyteller always has this one thing which we want to do, which is like put our thoughts on paper and have the whole feeling of writing. I always felt that I wanted to be that, going to a lot of bookstores, being a voracious reader, and also my stint with books started with Reader's Digest and writing and reading those short stories in the fine one books, and also picking up a lot of. So for me, Reader's Digest has been like the place where I could like get to read a lot of writing from across the world in here. And again, it just duplicate Anandita is because I come from a family of professors. My father is a plant pathologist. My uncle is an IIT prof. So for me to like say, okay, I'm going to be a painter or a novelist, is something. My first reaction of my mother was that, oh, we are not business people, we can't sell books or we can't sell paintings. So that's what it is. So I got like a job which would pay, which is basically commercial art. So I could paint, I could draw, I could write and get paid for it. So that's where it came from. But deep in my heart, I love the whole idea. Like I used to love visiting Oxford and walking those streets there. And sometimes I would see like a little light bulb in one of those houses there, and someone writing on their desk. That idea of sitting in solitude and writing, and feeling like you are with words, and um, novelists have had huge respect for centuries. We have heard, we have seen how they write in terms of their writing, in terms of understanding that aspect, and through civilization and through wars, we have seen that a writer puts his or her thoughts into paper to express a desire to communicate through his or her story to what is happening around them. And in some form of a story they do that. And for me, I just did feel that going back to the medium of writing word by word, and understanding the process, and being the sole responsible person for that writing, is what I felt very good about. Is because um, it is ultimately your journey, and it is your writing, and whether others like it or do not like it, but ultimately it is your journey. So that's what it is. So that's, yeah. So it was like feeling that I'm somewhere in Paris or Oxford, and the sitting for like 3-4 years and just writing in my own space, so without any deadline, and also having mood swings, and also having writer blocks and everything which I've read. So for me, it was almost like going back to Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris and understanding how artists and writers function. So,
Okay. Anindita, when you're writing your first novel, and clearly it's the story that you've created, how challenging does it become to keep the personal from the character? And did you face that struggle?
Right. So, Shaili, I feel right. I mean, of course, novelists get asked a lot if their book was biographical. I have asked this question also as a journalist several times. So I don't think it's a question to be irritated by. But I have noticed, and since this is the Women Writers Fest, I want to speak specifically about how women writers are viewed and the questions they get asked. I have noticed that women get asked more whether their books were biographical, because somewhere there's the sense that men write from pure imagination, but women draw from their own life. It's been, historically, I've seen it. So again, I'm not irritated, but I've thought about this a lot. Even while writing, you do end up drawing details of a character, the way they look, their quirks, their habits from people around you. And sometimes when the character has become so real, because you've lived with them, in my case for 5 years, you can't in the end then change it to not resemble somebody around you. The intention was never to out someone, or kind of to reveal these identities, but I think things just seep in. I think Albert Camus kind of had phrased it best when he had said fiction is the lie through which we tell the truth. So I think there are bigger ideological questions that you can't say in real speak or in journalism that you can say in fiction. But I also think character details do seep in. I think everything is from the life around me, and yet nothing is from the life around me. I think it's very hard to draw that line. And I feel as I write more books and I do more conversations like this, it helps me also think about that. But it's not an easy answer. None of the stories about a mother and daughter, and they are not me and they are not my mother. Yet I feel I'm both women, and I feel I'm neither women. So it's quite a complex answer.
Ashwini, what was it like for you drafting Urja's character? I mean, how much of it really did you draw from nearby? I keep thinking, like, if I was to write fiction, I'd be damn worried about just sort of thinking of somebody right next to me and sharing that story, right? Which is possibly why I've never even dared to. But curious to know how you went about your writing process.
um, again, as a storyteller, we do research, we do see a lot of people, we travel, and we kind of start talking to various kinds of people. And because we always keep our eyes and ears open, it's just that sometimes a character comes out, and there's also a journey that character follows. And sometimes it's fiction, sometimes it's an experience you've heard or you yourself have dealt with. So a character development happens through a journey in the mind and on paper, and how you, as a writer, want to craft the whole journey. For me, with all my characters, for me, I don't see a difference between my films and my and writing a book. Is because the character journeys for every character, for a film or in the book, has always been what is the expectation of a reader or a viewer from the character. And in a movie, I'm going to be showing certain character traits, and it's up to the viewer to be taking what he or she wants to take forward from that character. Maybe they would see some of their bits in that character because I'm showing something of what has been written. But in a book, I do feel that there are a lot of parts where a reader would take his or her own view of what I have written as Urja. So maybe Urja is a woman, but a guy, a man reading the book also will take some parts of it, is because relationship of a human being with their parents or with their surroundings or with their friends and with their very state of being doesn't change. So it's up to the reader then to take what they want. If you ask me some things which I like, and maybe that's why it is there, Urja is nowhere close to me, but there are some parts of hers which is very close to me, which is her love for nature, which is growing up with the forest around, is because I love nature, I love forest. I've been like traveling every year to just be in the forest. So for me, then those things will always start throwing back, because I cannot let go of the things which I love and I want to put that. So there's a very thin balance there. Love for books that has come through her grandfather. So those
Yeah.
things will be there, but then the interpretation keeps changing. A philosophical aspect of why does she go to Banaras and what happens there also starts speaking. And maybe what happens is that you start questioning your own self also. So for me, the biggest takeout in Mapping Love was that we always rejoice and celebrate birth, but we never talk about death.
Okay.
And so
Sure.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the big takeaway from me reading your books has been how real and imperfect the characters in your books are, which is sort of an important sort of telling of our times, right? Because we are conflicted in so many different ways as people, as characters, as I guess the heroes of your books. Anindita, looking at the whole mother-daughter relationship in your novel, I am very curious to know, why did you think it was important to talk about that? Increasingly, a bunch of big novels have spoken about this, and it seems to be like this relationship that's meant to never have imperfections, but it actually deeply does, and that reality often gets lost in us all trying to make that look so perfect. How did you navigate that?
Right. So, Shaili, I think the answer also lies in, you mentioned the recent books. So the answer also lies in who's writing those books. I think majority of literature that all of us have probably read, in the years past have been by men, writing about men. The female characters are very rarely the central focus of the story. If there are women, they are, either good or bad. You're not really getting deep into their layers, or they're very boxed. As more and more women and young women are writing stories, are writing books which are getting published in India and abroad, I think the relationship with the mother is bound to be explored, because that is the primary relationship that a woman has with another woman. Every woman has a mother. Every woman might not have a daughter or a sister or a sister-in-law or a close best friend, but every woman has a mother. So I think the start to this whole phenomenon of, there have been a fair number of mother and daughter books recently. Of course, there was Avni Doshi's Girl in White Cotton, also Dharini Bhaskar's These Are Bodies Possessed with Light. Madhuri Vijay's Farfield, though not dwelling on the mother-daughter angle, was about this daughter and her mother. My book, I would like to stress that I don't necessarily see it as a mother-daughter book. My idea was to show this phenomenon, show women finding their identity from the perspective of two women. And, there are several other women in the book as well. And having them as mother and daughter helped, because it allowed me to show two different very vantage points of, generational shift or privilege, etc. So they happen to be mother and daughter. But I think the answer does lie in the fact that more women are writing books and they are telling stories of women, and these are getting published. And the mother daughter relationship is bound to get explored in all its layers and its ambiguity and grayness, because yes, no human relationship is of one kind. So the minute we start addressing these truths and see that there are friction in real life relationships, I think it's just about allowing these women novelists the privilege of exploring what they want to. And I feel that's why it's happening.
Yeah. Ashwini, writing is also a great deal about reading. At least that's what I have learned in my journey as an author. I was just wondering, was reading a very significant part of growing up for you? And perhaps for all potential novelists, you could give us an insight into how your reading habits have shaped.
I think reading, yes, is a very important part of our being, is because just not as a novelist, but because I'm a storyteller across all mediums, especially movies and ads and everything. For me, understanding human psychology is the most important aspect of storytelling. And also, reading all kinds of books is because stories come from everywhere, and it's very important to understand the whole process of writing in every form. So if I'm a filmmaker, then I'm watching also a lot of movies. And if I wanted to attempt writing a book, so I have read a lot of books. But if you ask me recently that did I read a lot of books, no, I didn't read a lot of books now in the past 2 3 years, is because I was just so concentrating on my novel that I didn't honestly want to get influenced by any other writer and say, okay, this person has written it like this, so then there is a kind of influence which will come in. So I wanted to avoid that. But yeah, reading has been a very important aspect of our growing up years. Like I said, Reader's Digest was something which we all started off with,
Yeah,
and that's how it is. So yeah,
sure.
I
So,
also read a lot of non-fiction books, honestly, is because non-fiction books really help me open my mind in terms of a lot of things.
yeah, I could say the same. I have to say, you both made me read two really good fiction books after a long time. You've, of course, done a lot of work, and we've seen that, whether it's Neel Batte Sannata, Bareli Ki Barfi, Panga. How are you getting inspiration for stories in general? I understand that you're looking at a Sudha Murthy piece coming up, and then you've done this whole Leander Pace, Mahesh Bhupati series. Where are you finding inspiration?
Life, there is no major rocket sign, or forget rocket science. I think it's the wrong word to use. I think there's no major thing in that. It is just being quite disciplined and moving forward every day, keeping your eyes and mind open, and reading a lot of material, reading all kinds of material, whether it's newspapers or books or novels or non-fiction, fiction, watching documentaries, watching movies, and seeing life as it is. So if uh, for me also, it is whatever I do has to say something in terms of inspiration or aspiration, or making a point in a way that doesn't say you need to do this, but takes a thought away after you read or watch. So that is what I intend to do always. So for me, Mahesh Bhupati Liana Pay's story was had to be told, is because it is something which the world needs to know, the youngsters need to know. It is about partnerships, it is about how you need to work, what makes you a good sports person, and great partnerships in every field. And it is also important for the younger generation of our country, who would be the future leaders in every aspect of whatever they choose to be. So I always find, why am I telling this story? I ask these questions, and why do I need to tell the story? What is it that I'm going to achieve? in terms of what my audience or what my readers or who are going to take out of it. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm actually making Mr. Narayan Murthy and Mrs. Sudha Murthy's biopic. It's just not her biopic, so it's their story. It's more of Mr. Narayan Murthy, why he is what he is today. Yeah.
Okay, great. Good luck with that. Okay, Anandita, now this book cover has moons in its various stages. From what I understand, that the illuminated was supposed to be called uh, the moon of, oh, I can't remember the
The
name. What's
moons of
it?
their lives.
The
Yes.
moons of their lives. That's right. So, what's the moon center of this? Because I see you following a lot of conversations where the metaphor of the moon and its light is what you talk about, at least on your Instagram page. So just curious to know about the secret there.
Right. So, Shaili, I did adopt a kind of lunar, symbology. There's a lunar trope through the book, which is what inspired the cover. For the whole time that I was writing the book, in my head, the title of the book was "The Moons of Their Lives." All the women in the book are named after the moon. Tara is, of course, star, but all the other women are named after the moon. The men are named after the sun. The chapters are moon phases, and the idea was about how we think of the moon as reflecting the sun's light. But what happens if the sun goes away? If the sun is eclipsed, then can the moon find its own light? And I was just using that as a metaphor for men and women, because the central figure, the patriarch, it's not a spoiler because it's on the jacket and he dies on page 1, so it's not a spoiler. But Robi Malik, Robi is a Bengali version of Ravi, so it means sun, dies on page 1. So how will his wife and his daughter navigate life without being, circling this central sun? So hence, there was this moon metaphor, and the interpretation by very talented designer Bonita Vashimre was about showing this kind of collective of women, because I feel that the story is not about just mother or daughter or one woman or two women. It's about women coming together. So it's about many moons. And I particularly like, there's, I don't know how many people would open it and see, so I'll do it here. But the idea is there are half moons here. But if you open the jacket, she's kind of got like, you reach your full illumination. So I really love what she's done there. So there, that was the lunar kind of symbology. I feel also in a lot of feminist writing, the moon has always been used. The lunar energy kind of signifies, female energy, right? It's the more calm glow. It's there's a lot of talk about how the moon cycle mirrors the menstrual cycle, so all of that. So I was really keen to kind of play with that a bit more. And eventually I realized that, the idea of moons expanded to the idea of light. So hence it's called the illuminated, but it's about women and the moon basically finding its own light. So that was the kind of the story behind the cover and the symbology.
Yeah. So, in terms of your literary inspirations, do you have people around here today who we have read? You did mention how you were inspired by the possibilities that Arundhati Roy's book did for Indian
Right.
writing across the world. But what about just literary inspiration for you?
Right. So I feel I was, I have been, I'm trying to expand now, quite a conventional reader. So I've not been one for mystery or thrillers or horror or sci-fi. The writers I love, I would like to write books like them. So which is, I guess, they are categorized as literary fiction. But Jhumpa Lahiri, Amitav Ghosh, Jonathan Franzen, Akhil Sharma, who's just written 3 books, but if anyone has to ask me about my desert island books, I mean, I would take Akhil Sharma's Family Life with me. So sometimes I feel one book can really change your life. It's not about the entire oeuvre, but definitely Jhumpa Lahiri too, her earlier writing in English. I can't say I'm a big fan of the more recent works. And also then Julian Barnes, J.M. Coetzee, However, more recently, Shaili, I have been introduced, by a lot of young colleagues at work, because I did edit, culture magazine. So I had colleagues who were reading books for work and reading a lot more than I was. I had to edit the paper. I didn't have the bandwidth to read every book that was out. I had young colleagues introduce me to a lot of recent feminist sci-fi and feminist horror fiction. So that's a genre which I would really highly recommend, to everybody listening in. I so enjoyed reading the works of Carmen Maria Machado. She won the Folio Prize a couple of years ago. She's an American writer who's writing kind of feminist speculative fiction. So with the gender dystopias, with the gender imbalance around us today, I guess this whole new clutch of women are imagining what happens if this goes too far. So I think these are really mirror to our times, and it's fascinating reading her. There's a Nigerian writer who I really like who writes feminist horror called Leslie Neka Arima. So these are people that, but it's all very recent. I must say I've been quite a conventional reader, otherwise. Margaret Atwood, of course. So, just books everyone likes. But I'm trying to expand my horizon to read a lot of different kinds of books by women, particularly at the moment. So, yes.
Okay, great. A word from the two of you, and I'll start with Ashwini for the Women Writers Fest. We complete 7 years of this festival, and for us, it's been a very interesting journey, which started out with the question mark: why do women need their own festival? And I would say because all other festivals are default men, because they just don't even say that, right? There's that with special women's panel, and we've seen that on all kinds of festivals. So Ashwini, first I'll come to you.
I think it's very, very important to keep inspiring a whole lot of women to come forth and not feel guilty about doing what they really want. Is because I just feel that women keep doubting themselves to take up new challenges, and with you, Shelley, being there and really, like we were talking this before also, is that you have really been spearheading She the People, and with various kinds of women and their stories in every aspect, and doing it without any barriers, and that is what is most important. So when you spearhead and when you show different kinds of women across India, from every corner, from every lane, doing something for themselves, and finding a cause and an effect in their lives, it's going to inspire a whole generation. So and we need more and more women out there to, in their small little way, to be doing things more than they think they can.
Right.
Anindita.
Yes, absolutely. Very well said, Ashwini. I agree. I think the problem lies with, women are unable to give themselves permission to be storytellers. It's something that Nilanjana Roy, who's another writer that I really admire, in our last conversation was telling me that it takes women longer to believe that, yes, I have a story that I can tell, and to give ourselves permission that I can be a novelist. I think it is a gendered thing. And I think as times are changing and more women are getting published, it's giving other women, and when there are forums like this, it's giving other women the bandwidth, or it's allowing them to give themselves the permission to write. Because ultimately, writing and storytelling of any kind is a matter of confidence, because you have to believe that the story you have to say is worth something and that someone is interested in listening. So I just want to say also to, aspiring writers, the writing students, all the women listening in, that your story is important. And yes, all of us are here now looking out and seeking women's stories. So give yourself the permission to write, because believe me, it's getting published now and people are listening. And if no one publishes you, self-publish on Amazon, or start publishing your poetry on Instagram. You can make your own platform. Don't wait for somebody else to, allow you. You allow yourself.
I also have one more thing to add, is that I think we need to express our thoughts in the most comfortable language we can. and a lot of
Right.
women feel that, oh, they may not be very comfortable in English, but there are such amazing stories and storytellers in Malayalam, in Tamil, in Bengali, in Oriya, in Assamese, in Marathi, in Kannada. There are a lot of new writers who are now rising in Kannada. And I think it's very important to just write in the language which you believe in, is because that's where you'll tell your story best, and no one else would know the insights better than you. So it's important to like just write. First write and then move on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very important point. And today, I'm very sort of, excited by the opportunity for readers and listeners and viewers to have this multilingual, sort of array of works. We're already seeing this thanks to subtitling on our television, but I think there's a big movement for translations
Yes.
for those who can't reach out to content there. I mean, for example, we're talking feminist writing. I mean, K.R. Meera is literally an iconic writer who started out very much so writing in her own language and became an icon before she turned into, English writing and so on and so forth. So I think it's really important that we all, as authors and champions of women writing and readers and listeners, we must push for this, because the point that both Anindita and Ashwini are making is that not only should we be more and more, we should recognize that we can write and we don't need permission, we should also feel very comfortable in our own skin narrating what we want to, rather than what seems to be what publishing is asking for in today's world. Anindita and Ashwini, thank you very much and good luck with your novels. A reminder to our viewers, Mapping Love and The Illuminated. So go out there and get these books. Thanks for joining us on the Women